And where are they? Why aren't they standing up and going, oh, this is a great idea? Right? It's just a little back like of City Hall hangers-oners that contributed to the campaign. Status.
Good idea.
Yeah.
But it's just so opposite of, like, they're not community engaged. They're just these little groups. And if you look at all the amendments, it doesn't change the fact that he picks the 5. Right? It always starts at 5. 5 to 11.
And then what changed at the end there on the
People
I haven't seen any language. It's all Dirk Van der Marquez, kind of like back thing with Cox or somebody. Just like floating stuff out. Like there was
This
some.
gentleman is the camera.
Oh yeah, the mayor's
The
gonna.
camera person.
Live stream.
The guy.
Live stream. People can come here live if they want.
They're not in a.
In any state of service.
Yes. Yes. Okay, it's still early. There's Dan.
Well, he was predicting
there he
he was
is.
going to pull them.
Dan the man.
I was right. And then I clicked on the link to see the thing, and it's still the old policy, right? And it's still tied to the hours. And my other big talking point is
Oh my God.
membership report. You do it for all the pieces. You support it, not for legal.
The deadly force policy because of the council vote.
Oh, well, yeah, I know that. So
I know, but they had to put out an official notice, and they did.
Okay, and it's the way we want it.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, it's just been the one that we're trying to implement has been reneged.
Right, and they're back to the old one, which still isn't exactly right. But then we know the meeting is the 24th. Hey, I've been working on
Hey.
I'm going to have to give them what because they're going to tell me to help. So we figured out pretty much the same amount of time to drive. 1 minute to drive.
It's Joanne Protection.
I'm with you now.
One more vote.
You got it right. Oh, now all of a sudden instead of budget up the water, that's important.
So we just said, we don't need a replay of Joanne Hardesty last month. I couldn't bear that. There's water over here too, folks. Yeah, water. Help yourself to some water.
At least it gets in. You got the clothes. Somebody else's.
We have room in here. I wonder if we should set it up in the street. We're just going to go the rest of the way.
and then bring it over.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, let's try putting it up and see see how it goes. We just pull first you pull the top up
Till it latches.
so it latches, and it's pretty hard. It's pretty dang hard.
Which one am I? And the
Yeah, the top one. That's it. You got it. There you go. No, you're doing the bottom one though. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then that one's hard to get at
That's gonna be much
sometimes. Yeah. Okay, and we can keep going up.
Joanne Protection.
Yeah. She's not coming, but
Okay, we're ready for
somebody else
her.
might be hungry.
Is that far enough up for?
That's a nice pop-up.
Okay, so how does that get us shaped? Let's move it out. Let's move it out into the street. Maybe that'll give us some.
Have at least, yeah, get the other legs down.
Yeah, don't worry about.
See, now you got some shade.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's bring it in a little bit more. How's that work?
That's good. That's good for the banner holders.
That's good for the banner holder. I guess that's all we're gonna get.
Yeah. Unless you lift these legs, lower those legs. Lower them.
Yeah. Lower these?
No, lift that one.
I can't get it up anymore.
No. Leave them all the way up. Take the other ones on the street side and lower them down. It'll tilt the thing so you're blocking more sun.
Can we recruit one more banner holder?
There you go.
Visibility down,
Yeah, out front.
Well, yeah. Let him have the shade. Yeah, so excited to work.
Well, I was just
There you go. See now.
Well, that wasn't a great idea.
Well,
Guy in my
it did produce more shade.
It's a little bit better.
I don't know.
There's water here.
It's not as hot today as it was last month.
Because I don't have a box for Jeff. So usually I just take them and I put them in the box with all the
ready.
I don't have to get to know him. I got plenty of Brian.
That's true.
Because you can't have him with too much talk.
Amendments. Right. Better.
She'll give us a list of
Yeah.
Got it, yes.
I submit written testimony because I'm tired of the 180 seconds I get.
Nice to meet you.
But I get to write to the DOJ judge. Even though they don't answer me, they know that
What's the names?
You were at the second meeting or you were at the...
No, I'm not at either one of them. I got arrested in February.
Help yourself in here in the back.
For signing up to testify against police union contract that had been negotiated out of the
right?
settlement agreement. They discharged the charge.
What is that? We need to redo.
The guys that were
I can't tell.
Chance
Okay.
all the people that could have been there to suppress
This way, Rax.
dissent. They're using the squad that was employed to suppress me. So that was the first time. I thought up to then it was just some kind of informal thing that happened after one terrorist task force for the police bureau after the federal guy. Those silence cases, they're $10 million. Go up. But now that I see that the cities have really done as well, I realize, oh, there's power here. It wasn't just some kind of scratch my back. We've been, Joanne and I have been targeted U.S. Attorney General and
Hold that for me, will you? I need help with a lot of stuff.
How far is that? Okay. Wow. And you're in Milwaukee, right? Oh, you're in Yeah.
Well, that's not a good heart, but oh well. That's
the guy that died today? Is that the guy that died today?
No, that was last year. That was last year. No, it was January this year. He was in Clackamas County. Clackamas County. There was a guy who died today.
Yeah, in Charlotte.
Oh,
yeah.
Mr. Art, institutional. I found something very interesting. Researching
governor.
Who died? Bragging about how women in law enforcement. There was also an African American woman in the custody of an African American woman.
Getting better.
Elderly. And they both.
It's not a good song.
But yeah, while she was like 17 months when she was in the bed park. That was the first I'd ever heard of it. No, she just says elderly African American woman. I will alert him to the page where she is.
James, how you doing?
Good. Wow, okay.
Good.
And there's an officer.
Come on.
And there's an officer law.
Officer Bacon.
Looking good. Look at you.
Yeah. I think it's like, you have to think
You
about
print
it.
like my daughter. Oh, you are my daughter.
There you go.
But you.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, honey.
Like there's no inside.
Oh. Don't, you can't hit me anywhere.
No. But I do anyway.
I know. Go, rascal.
Think about Fred a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks.
There was just so much that.
You can, I have a list of things too. If you want to pick from
Was a particular kind of insurance.
You have a shared charge. I think
It's the same list, but everybody is updated and usually local.
we confuse Carol's kindness with Josh. So like we something else, you just slap me on the back of the head.
Yeah, we don't
And if you think about it,
But that was an infection.
exactly right.
It wasn't being assaulted. It was like,
Well, yes, it was more like moving on. But what it said was is that we had each other, right? It knew that I was not going to take offense to that at all.
it's always an infection.
God bless Jeremy.
I can also hold it up
Especially in
here.
the early you think long hours. That's when, lawyers want to get up and
This
say,
happens always where I want to be.
if it happens, you're usually the first guy that. He was so mentally ill. And as a father, this is like, how, I can't get into the conversation. They're portraying my family. Yeah, we don't want you to get over
I love the way it looks. It's like such a statement. Sad statement, but a statement.
I need to pay my time. The one that happened this week was
We're at 50
wheels in my chair.
Northeast Halsey.
Yeah.
We always are. The 12th. The spot where Keaton Otis was assassinated. You can still see the bullet marks on the wall. Doing chalking right now. All names of people around the country who lost their lives to the police.
Letting first thought I used to have.
On the left side is Portland Stolen Lives. Keaton Otis, Aaron Rama, James Tony Stevenson, Quantas Hayes, Christopher Kalonji,
Yeah, yummy. Tastes like ramen.
Bodie Phelps, James Jahar Perez,
Yeah, there you go.
Terrell Johnson, and not killed by police, but killed by white supremacists in a Jeep. Larnell Bruce, who was hit on the 10th a year ago and died on the 13th, which will be tomorrow. There is a Don't Shoot PDX event for that, which I won't be able to make.
We're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming to the Keaton Otis Vigil. Today is the anniversary of Sergio Wyke, and so we just wanted to bring his name into space. He was, can you tell me a little bit about him? Do you know a little bit about his
Yeah,
story?
I'm friends with his dad on Facebook. He was killed August 12, 2016, so today is his 1 year in California by Vista Sheriff Office. So today is his 1 year, and we as a group of Facebook who support each other, we just bring his name and to want everybody like honor his life, and to sure we're here for Keaton Otis and his dad and others children who we lost. As usually we're here on the 12th. Everybody who's the first time, we're usually here on this corner, because in this corner Keaton was shot to death, and this Georgia and start his dad. He come every day here to show people what happened to his son, and we need to stand up for defense our rights. We need to stand up against police violence, and we need to organize community. The community know what's going on and start to do, each one of us, what we can do. Even little thing can bring some changes. So that's what we hear from 6 to 7. We honor their life as much as my son Christopher Kalonji, who was killed in January 28, 2016 by Clackamas County Sheriff Office during his mental crisis. So usually Joanne here to go to start and talk, and I kind of feel, I don't know, I never start something like this, but with this community I'm a long time, so I kind of take my step to, and usually we go represent each other, because some people is the first time here, some people we know. So I start with myself. I'm Irene Kalonji, mother who lost her son in police violence, and Joanne Hardesty brought me to this community and support me in my hard time and my different time and any time, you know. So I stay with community and come in each month here to honor our loved one, you know, who we lost.
Thank you all for coming. I'm Dave Hardesty, operating out as Hard Space on Facebook, and I became very close to Fred Bryant over the time when he asked Joanne and I to help him in his time of need, and so I like the idea of a vigil and being vigilant.
I'm Roberto with after looking at this and coming here many times and meeting Fred Bryant before he passed away, this whole situation, I just look at this whole thing as an assassination by an American police bureau against citizens. That's the only way I can see it.
I'm Chris Lowe. I started coming during the time when Black Lives Matter was very prominent, and I've kind of fallen away in recent months, but I've been feeling like I've been meaning to come back sooner. And, you know, for me, the idea of a vigil, it's important to point of focus, not only maybe if I can be regular coming, but it will lead to other things too, but at least something. It's a long story.
My name is Amanda Bowman. I'm a pastor at Trinity United Methodist Church in Southeast Portland, and I believe that ritual has the power to heal us, transform every place.
My name is Brian King with the anti-racism group in the Democratic Socialists of America. First time here. Thanks to Chris for inviting us.
Hi, and I'm Jeb King. I'm also a member of the anti-racism group, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, and also a member of NAACP. I think the first person that I learned about here, those who are here with us, it was Quintus Hayes, and I got to hear from his family at the, oh God, I'm gonna cry. I'm talking about it. Alright, so I felt ignorance before I went to celebrate with them at the park, celebrate his life, I guess, and that was the Night Out for Safety and Liberation event that we went to. So he was the first person that I learned about, and now I'm learning about Keaton Otis, and this is my first time here at this vigil, so I plan to keep coming every month.
Thank you.
I'm Mungian Cakes. I come because of Fred and Irene.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I'm James Ovsink. I've been coming for
circumstances such that there are no more hashtags, that we can work on justice here in Portland.
My name is Danny, and this is my first time.
My name is Dan Handelman. I'm with the group Portland Cop Watch. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary this year, and we've been doing it a long time. We helped hold vigil for a family of Dwayne Shaw in the early 90s and Dickie Dow in the late 90s, and we suggested to Fred that he should do this vigil in 2010 when Keaton was shot. So we've been on and off part of it ever since it started.
My name is Mary Rossi, and I'm here primarily to remember, to honor these people that we've lost, and to make myself more aware, and to learn and to try to support the families in whatever way I can, and share the community, as sad as it is, hopefully with the end result of making some change in the future.
My name's Michelle DeShazer, and it's hard sometimes to articulate what keeps me coming. I think I probably started about a year ago. One thing I sense in being here is that everybody is supporting one another in all sorts of things that are happening in our community, and I like to be a part of that. And it's a small thing to be able to do, but it's actually, as more people come, which I've noticed, it's really a pretty big thing to do. And particularly this has been going on for such a long time, and I'm glad that people have stuck with it. So thank you for having gotten things going. Isn't that horrible to say, gotten things going, because of what got it going? But anyway, thank you.
My name is Benjamin. This is my first time here. I guess we can just say thanks for everyone else for being here, and it feels good to take steps to being part of the community here in Portland.
Hi, I'm Barbie. I'm a part of Asians for Black Lives, and I'm here to stand in solidarity with the families that have lost their loved ones.
My name's Eviko. I'm also with Asians for Black Lives, and I'm here for a number of reasons, but to represent Asian and Black solidarity.
I'm Shanti. I am here to remember and to connect with all of you, and to feel like really concretely in a place where this kind of work is happening. It feels really powerful to be here and talking about it, and to literally see the bullets in the walls where Keaton was murdered. So thank you all for being here.
Hi, my name is Ariel. It's also my first time, and I think it's easy to get like really lost in all the national stuff and global things that are happening, and it's like the most important to just start with your own community. And so yeah, thank you for hosting this.
My name is Mariah. I've been coming here for years. I also want to just put out there today especially that we stand in solidarity with the anti-fascist folks in Charlottesville, and this is a different front, the same struggle. Like Roberto pointed out, this was an assassination, just like that was an assassination, and folks of color on the stolen continent have been fighting multiple fronts of white supremacist violence since the beginning, and so this is all one struggle.
I'm Frances O'Halloran, and I'm here as a mom representing my sons and their friends and their cousins who are all friends of Keaton's. And my young son grew up with Keaton. I have been involved in community police accountability since 1972, and not much has changed as far as how the police interact with our children. Want the traps removed, and I would like to point out Kendra James. She was about 100 pounds, and she was trying to get away from the police, and she was shot in the butt, similar to the way that senator was shot, with internal injuries, but rather than getting her emergency help, she was left to lay on the overpass get more overpass over the freeway, the freeway over here on North One. And the police, one of the officers said they thought she was faking, and she bled to death. Okay, so there's a lot to be done. I've been documenting a lot of things over the years, and I think I'm about ready to put it out in some form or fashion, and I hope it'll be very powerful. I would like to give a plug to my young son, Davian John. He's written a lot of rap music, and he just came out with an album, and there are a couple of songs about this very incident. It's a very powerful album if anybody wants to check it out, from Davian John. It's called Me. And it's about growing up in Portland, which is supposed to be such a progressive city.
I'm Maria Cahill. I'm an organizer for Irene Circle, and I'm here to support the families. I come here a lot for a lot of different reasons. I really appreciate the community here. It feels like church. I grew up Catholic, so you know, it feels like better than church. With people that are actually care about other people. To be surrounded with you every month is really powerful for me. So I appreciate that. And Ariel, and all the first comers, thank you so much for coming. Ariel said it's important to remember what's going on locally, and that's what we do every month that we can chalk names. These are all people who have been killed by police in the Portland metropolitan region, so either Washington County, Multnomah County, or Clackamas County. And we do that also at the Feet to Fire campaign every month. That's a national district attorney accountability effort, and Irene Circle supports that protest, and we have different demands. So I have a flyer over there by the water container. If you want to find out more about that, it happens every month, so far just either in Portland or in Oregon City. So the next one is in Oregon City. It's always during the day, so I get that it's a little hard to come to. If anybody feels tired or lightheaded or hungry, there's chocolate and food, other quick foods and water there. We had an episode the last time that I do not want to repeat. Thank you all for coming. It's not my event, but I still need you and appreciate you.
Thank you. I want to jump in here a little bit because before I forget, post his music on the Facebook page. So I did. Okay. Assassination. You guys may think that was hyperbole, but you need to remember that Mayor Adams had fired Chief Sizer earlier in the day. The gang unit, in their testimony afterwards, described fear that the gang unit was in jeopardy. So I say we just don't know enough to figure out conclusively that Keaton was picked at random after a conspiratorial meeting among the gang unit and a guy from a whole other department that they just launched on the first black guy that looked worth killing. So this assassination business, you will never see anything about criminal behavior in the police reports. It's been very interesting to me that the city, having killed so many people so frequently, began to hire groups of consultants to come in. Originally it was the Park group and then the OIR group to give reports. After they'd killed maybe 10 people, they'd put together a report. And they describe the traffic, the chatter that's going on between the team, and they say facial hair, they say, I don't think they say black, I'm not exactly sure, but they say that he was driving a car that it looked like an old lady would drive after they probably run the plates and found out it's in his mother's name. They end up saying he looks like he could be a gangster, right? And this is an after-action testimony now, this part right here where they're just sort of papering things over. And then the OIR group says, and see, there was no instance of racial profiling. So they actually cite the data that proved it and then report to the city, their employers, that we have no evidence that racial profiling was involved. I bring up racial profiling because in the year 2000, the city of Portland was compelled as part of a statewide thing to start tracking racial profiling data. And they've now maintained that now for 17 years. And correct me if I'm wrong, that the numbers have not substantially changed. If you are African American, you are 2 times more likely to be stopped as per your census population than white people. They've said, the police tell us, well, we can't tell who's driving. You don't hold us accountable for that. So some years ago, they began collecting pedestrian stop data. And if you're a pedestrian in Portland, an African American, you're 4 times more likely to be stopped. Once stopped, if you're African American, you're twice as likely to be searched.
That's the one.
All right.
So that makes it 4 times right there.
Right. You're enhancing deprivation on the target population, right? So that holds true for the pedestrian stops, and it's darn near close for Hispanic people. I suspect what it does is it breaks out along melanin reflective qualities in skin as to like whether you get stopped and searched.
And I think the outcomes also, the convictions are also another
you're
another
jumping
layer.
ahead of me.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
got one that goes right in between.
Okay.
Because the kicker is, and you need to take this home with you, if you're African American and you are stopped and searched by police, you are half as likely to have drugs, weapons, or outstanding warrants than whites. It's called the hit rate. And now we pivot over to Munchen cakes to say, after all of this disparity that leads up to the front end, you can thank the DA for racial disparities in charges. And there's a great study out that shows that African Americans are paid $25 million more in fines for jaywalking and spitting and speeding over the last, I believe it was 12 years. So there's a disparity once, all this is happening before you get into the RAD report, which describes racial disparity in sentencing and incarceration. So I brought the stop data stuff up because we have been involved in, I got to tell you that one of the things that Fred did when this was a smaller gathering of people who were misunderstood, and pretty much everybody thought that Keaton had deserved to be killed, that he had shot somebody, right? So we use it as a check-in and a strategy development thing about what was going to happen in the next month, where we're going to testify, where we're going to show up. And in that vein, I let you know that the city of Portland was found in 2012 to be engaged in an illegal use of force against people who were perceived to be in mental health crisis. So part of that settlement agreement, there were only two things in the Obama era that had to do with race. One was to implement a 2009 police plan to address racial profiling that had never had its first annual review. And in that body, you still have Amanda Fritz, who's still on city council. You have Dan Saltzman, who is still on city council. They never implemented the plan, so we worked hard to get it into the plea deal. Also in the plea deal is the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division mandates that the city improve its demographic data collection. And I always thought that that was so they could come back once we had a white president and make a case against racial profiling. So, if Fred was here, one of the things we would be jawing over is the fact that Trump's Attorney General Jeff Sessions has issued a memo to local municipalities offering them the opportunity to get out of their plea deals. And the city of Portland, the progressive city of Portland, is jumping on the Trump bandwagon to rewrite their plea deal. And this applies specifically to areas that were concerned to Fred in that there is no language. Hey, motherfucker! There is no language in the plea deal for the 2009 plan to address racial profiling.
That was a police officer, by the way.
That requires them to conduct the improved data collection, demographic data collection. This is all getting shoved over into a mayoral special appointment, special group, and he'll tell us whether or not he's complying with his rewritten plea deal. And I apologize to the people at home. That was a motherfucking pig over here doing the surveillance thing. And if you don't understand the shit that Fred Bryant's family went through after the shooting, if you don't understand what the witnesses Eileen Barnes went through when she wanted to testify against the police narrative that Keaton Otis deserved to be killed, you don't understand the pressure that we're up against.
Can I say something? I used to protest with Joe Walsh out in front of City Hall with my sign, "We do not trust the Portland police." And unknowingly, one day, a police officer was walking up the street, still in my mind. I said, "Oh, okay." And can you correct me on this? Did Keaton's body fall out of the car?
No, it was pulled part way out, but it was left exposed so they could put the gun under it.
Oh, they beanbagged him too.
According to,
I beanbagged his dead body.
I said, well, you know, in Europe they usually encase the murder scene with blinding, blinders or whatever things to hide the stuff. But here, they leave the body out there for hours so that people can see it, kids can see it or whatever. So I thought in my mind, well, that's really bad. That's all wrong. So I asked this police officer, I said, well, how come they couldn't do that with Keaton Otis when they left his body laying out there for plain view for the people, the public, just for hours? They couldn't put some, partitions or things around it. Don't they have that in their cars or anything? He said, well, no, we have to wait for the medical examiner because we have protocols that we can't move anything until the medical examiner comes. So later I found out that this police officer was Police Chief Reese, and he boldly lied to my face. So I just thought, yeah, this system is totally rotten. They just want to show the community that if you mess with us, we'll mess with you and you'll be dead.
Okay, so when Kendra James was killed in 2003, there was a rule in place that was part of the police association contract. It said you have to wait 48 hours before you can interview an officer after the shooting. The officers involved went out to lunch or dinner, I can't remember which, right at the Applebee's up the street, and had a conversation, and they say they weren't talking about the case, but we know they were trying to get their story straight. So there was a big community push, the AMA Coalition, which was what's now called the AMA Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, for simplicity's sake, pushed to stop them from having these discussions and to get rid of the 48-hour rule. And I mean, the police association contract was renewed 2 or 3 times since then, and the 48-hour rule was put in, and finally, last fall, they pulled it out, but the police association didn't fight it tooth and nail, and we were wondering why. They got $9 million in return, and they had clearly been listening to the DA, unlike the city, who said for years, if you compel an officer to testify within 48 hours, I might not be able to prosecute the case because he said there's something called transactional immunity in Oregon where if you compel him to testify to the internal affairs, then I can't use that information in my criminal case. But it turns out he's wrong. He's reading a case from the 1980s that's about somebody who's compelled to testify to a grand jury, which is not an internal affairs situation. That is a situation where if you compel a person to testify, they're violating their own Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. And this is a DA who's went to law school. I've never been to law school, and I can see this case had nothing to do with that. So, in their great wisdom, after Quantas Hayes was shot, the officers were actually compelled to testify in less than 48 hours because we got rid of that thing in the contract. And then Terrell Johnson was killed in May. And in between, the DA made his little speech about, oh, you're going to ruin my chances to prosecute. And again, just so you know, there's never been a prosecution of an officer in the city since 1969 for killing somebody. Never. That's 48 years. He said, oh, you're going to take away my ability to prosecute. Don't do that anymore. So without telling the community, they changed the policy inside the Bureau, and they took 6 weeks to interview the officer who shot Terrell Johnson. 6 weeks. A lot longer than 48 hours. We, Portland Cop Watch, discovered that they were planning to formalize this new policy. They put out their deadly force policy on July 4th weekend, gave us 2 weeks to look at it, and buried in there it said, if the police officer shoots and kills somebody, you can't interview the cop. You can't interview the cop involved until after the grand jury is over, which is usually 3 weeks later, or 10 times 48 hours. So we call it the 10 times 48-hour rule. We worked with the AMA Coalition. We exposed all this. It became a big deal in the press. The city started falling all over themselves to say, well, you know, we're stuck because of the state law. The DA says blah, blah, blah. Last week, we had a 5-hour hearing at City Council. It involved the DOJ agreement, among other things, but the 48-hour rule was up, and we got the city to backtrack. And they said, we're going to institute the policy that says we're going to compel the officers to testify right away. We just have to clean up a few things. And just so you all know, they said on August 24th to bring it back to City Council, and if we need to mobilize the community again, we will. But for the time being, things are actually going our way for once. Because they realize there's, you know, they spent $9 million to get rid of that 48-hour rule, and the community expected it to be gone. So,
question about that, because the media I've been seeing has been reporting a movement away from this kind of almost endless interviewing, sort of back to 48 hours, and sort of reporting that as a victory, where it seems like,
just to be clear,
it's a shell game.
The rule that the union had in place was you can't interview them until at least 48 hours later. The rule they're trying to put in place is you have to interview them within 48 hours.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We say, we want them to interview them right away.
Just like everybody else.
And in no case ever more than 48 hours. The only exception would be if the officer is incapacitated, right? I don't know if we're going to win that one, but that's again, they always try to put a little loophole in. Even when we try to savor our victories, they try to put a loophole in. They also put in a loophole that says the police commissioner, which is the mayor in this case, the chief, and the city attorney can bypass the rule if they want to and tell them not to do the interview if they think it's a bad shooting. Like, that's the case where you want to call the officer in, right? Because then you can fire him right away while he's going on trial. So it's just, more shenanigans. But I was trying to give you some hopeful news that we actually won some.
So Dan, other than potentially showing up on the 24th, what can the organizations and people here do to help with the 48-hour rule fight?
Well, the record is actually still open until the 24th, so you can write to City Council and say you support what they're doing, that not doing 48, waiting for the end of the grand jury, but just say there shouldn't be exceptions, and we want it to happen right away. That would be helpful. And so, just in terms of what Dave was talking about with the DOJ agreement, there's a lot of problems with that agreement. We actually emailed back and forth earlier. There's part of the DOJ agreement that says if you or your loved one is killed by the police or shot by the police, you can't appeal. If they say there was no misconduct, you can't appeal that to our Citizen Review Committee, even though every other kind of misconduct you can appeal to the Citizen Review Committee. And that's written in the DOJ agreement. So we called it the Fred Bryant Clause, and we were hoping to get that removed while they're revising the agreement, but it's not even on the table right now. So that's one thing you can do too, especially for Keaton and his family.
Can I jump in on the Fred Bryant Clause?
Sure.
Because we're going to get more down. Both the 48-hour rule and the Fred Bryant Clause bring up a commonality, is that the 48-hour rule only applies in use of force when they kill somebody, right? So they built this special thing. So in all other cases of use of force, they perform best practices known nationally, which is prompt interview of witnesses and involved officers. So when you start hearing about, should we have 24 hours or should we have 48 hours, I want the buzzword to be end of shift report. This is an employer-employee problem. The employer needs to know Just like a Safeway manager would want to know at the end of the shift, did you get the shelves stocked? It's employers' rights to know what their employee did that day, right? So let's not give the 24 hours, because they can still sneak off to Applebee's like they did after killing Kendra James and change their stories. And that the other one about the police special treatment thing is that only after the auditor's independent police review division exonerates an officer for lethal use of force does the door shut to the CRC, right? Is that, so they create these second tracks because they want to make sure absolutely that they don't belabor the district attorney having to fake having a grand jury later to exonerate the guy, right? They want to build that thing up at the front end in the internal affairs division so the independent police review division can just take the clean shooting recommendation from the cops. And if you look at it, they're all city employees, right? The independent review division and the cops are telling you that they did nothing wrong, and they're doing it with too much frequency. And so one of my cries is you need checks and balances if you're going to be an American democracy. And it has to be an independent set of eyes that assesses what happened at the shooting. It's time to stop letting law enforcement tell you that nothing went wrong.
That's fine. So the other thing we were talking about was, and I'm surprised Dave didn't bring this up too, because this is another community demand. When the DOJ came in, they put in place a community board that was supposed to oversee the implementation of our agreement, Community Oversight Advisory Board. That board was allowed to wither and die and was drowned in the bathtub at the end of January of this year, and they still haven't replaced it. But the replacement they offered us, at the same time they put forward this 48-hour rule change a couple weeks ago, called the PCCEP. I'm not even going to explain what it stands for because it's just dumb. The PCCEP, to replace the Community Oversight Advisory Board, they took out the sentence that said, independently assess implementation of the agreement. They're striking that from the agreement as part of the deal. And then in the entire document, there's nothing that says they can make recommendations about whether the Bureau is following the DOJ agreement. So luckily, there's a lot of community outcry about that too. The mayor's pulled it back, and the record's open on that too. So I think it's worth saying we don't want a board that's all picked by the mayor, which is what the plan is right now. We want the community involved in picking the people who are going to be on that board. And we want them to be able to say whether or not the policies are being implemented the way we expected them to be. Obviously,
in open meetings.
And third, that's true. Thank you, Michelle. And we want them to have open meetings because right now the document is written that they're going to hold most of their meetings twice a month behind closed doors.
I wondered if you knew the federal judge who's supposed to be overseeing this.
What's that?
The federal judge who's supposed to be overseeing this. What is his judge time? Does he have anything to say about these new developments?
Here's our big problem. It is theoretically probable, because the city attorney said so, that Judge Simon, who oversees the agreement, is going to hold another fairness hearing. We held one in 2014. We came in and said what we thought. But the people who are party to this lawsuit, the actual parties, are the U.S. Department of Justice and the City of Portland. So they agreed, rather than go through a lawsuit, that they would fulfill this agreement. And if they think it's fair, and they think that it's adequate, then the judge is going to have a really hard time saying, well, the community says this isn't right. Because we're not party to the lawsuit, unfortunately. The AMA Coalition is an enhanced amicus. It's a friend of the court. So their voice is allowed in the courtroom, but it doesn't sway legally the decision on whether this is a fair agreement or not. What's that?
With the new Attorney General?
Right, so we have let's be clear about that, Francis. Let's not blame this all on Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions. Because when the COAB began its deliberations after they got installed, the DOJ wrote them a memo saying, we're the ones who decide if the implementation is happening, not you. You have to back off on making these recommendations about policies. They were very clear they didn't want the community having a voice in this. So this was under Obama.
Right. What I'm saying is now, Sessions is pretty much said
Definitely. So, but Judge Simon is our theoretical backstop, and he could say, I as a judge think that both parties, are wrong, and this is not a fair agreement. He could say that. I don't know. That's the only thing we can really hope for.
It seems evident, because I haven't seen anybody ask this question, that for some reason this PECA whatever doesn't fall under the public meeting law. And why doesn't it?
Well, it's a long and complicated answer, but the short answer is the city asserts, and I'm not sure it's true, that if a body is making recommendations to one official and not to a body that's making a decision, that they're not subject to public meetings laws. So the people who report to only the mayor are not a public body. People who report to only the chief are not a public body. But people who report to...
Should we be advocating that they need to report to the city council?
Well, we can do that. I think it's good to have the whole council involved in all of this. The problem that the old board ran into is that because of the public meetings laws, they found themselves constrained, that they couldn't have conversations with each other without creating a public meeting. And they were very frustrated by and they couldn't take a gift of a book that says police accountability on the cover because it costs more than $25. So there are all these public meetings, public body laws that frustrated them, and I kind of want to respect that and make sure we don't run into that again. But I also want to make sure that it says all their meetings will be in public, right? So rather than say it's a public body, I think we just insist all the meetings happen in public, right?
On a follow-up to that, one of the things that Jason Renaud from Mental Health Association of Portland gave in his testimony to stop the PSEP was nothing, no public business in a private meeting. And since he made that statement, I'm now aware that the police's Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Committee is also constrained by these public meeting laws. And so if you look at it, the idea is not to have advice come from the community generally. What these are people that are handpicked. I like to call them cronies, City Hall hangers-oners, people that contributed to the campaign. They get to sit in these things that don't disclose to you what their deliberations are. So if you value transparency and open public process, you're going to oppose the PCCEP and the BHUAC on the same ground.
Plus we get no help from the state because it's loaded with retired police.
Keep going, you've got more.
I know something you were talking about detail procedurally. The officer who shot in the leg, which I believe was by friendly fire, because they were just shooting everywhere, was taken to the hospital by another officer, one of the officers involved in the shooting. Took him to the hospital in a police car, which is totally against procedure. So they had their talk on the way to the hospital, and one of the officers in his report said when he looked at Keaton in the eyes, he looked like he knew something we didn't know.
Oh, is that crazy? They are saying in their testimony that they're able to read what he's thinking about the police are thinking.
Right.
And the OIR just repeated it.
Yeah.
The OIR report, that sentence is like in the first paragraph. They're saying that's okay.
What does that stand for, Andrew?
Office of...
It's a complicated story, but they just call themselves the OIR. That's just what it's called.
Okay.
Office of Independent Review.
That's because they were working for the Office of Independent Review in Los Angeles.
Right.
Started a consulting group called the OIR.
Yeah, they get paid to say the stuff.
The OIR.
And for the new people, if you didn't see the bullet holes already, that's where I personally went there. Shot at him 32 times, hit him 23 times. And one bullet ended up in the Radio Shack up the street.
Yeah, guy opened the door of the building. I want to speak to the millionaires now.
Okay.
I have I have Fred Bryant's papers. I have all of the DOJ, the grand jury testimony, all of the police reports, all the forensic reports from the state. I'm looking for somebody to make a film because there are holes in the story and the timeline is completely impossible. If you don't have a guy, I need a sound engineer, because my allegation of what happened is Roberto talked about is they have Keaton halfway out of the car and they fire several less lethal rounds at his obviously dead body that hasn't moved since they've gone into the trunk and gotten these guns out. And that is the point where the police officers are discharging the pistol that they dropped at the scene. So I need an audio guy that can help me do like the shots at Dallas audio profile so I can hear the pistol report covered over by the less often lethal shotgun blasts. So if you want to spend the rest of your life on the Keaton Otis case, I have the documents for you.
We're at 7 o'clock. We usually try to run a tight ship. Do we have anybody want to make a closing remark or just break up? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking care of us.